Well, let's start with the rapid reaction forces or rapid response forces, going from, I think they said 40,000 to 300,000. What this is basically a commitment by different NATO nations to maintain forces on a high alert status so that they could be dispatched to areas of concern in a shorter period of time than normal. So right now, NATO maintains a rapid response force of around 40,000. This is all inclusive, includes Navy, Air Force, ground troops. It's not that impressive, to be honest. 300,000 is a significant number of forces. But what we have right now is a statement of intent on the part of NATO. These 300,000 troops do not exist. I mean, they exist. They're different countries have, armies, but they don't have 300,000 troops that are trained, equipped, and provided with logistics sustainability to match the 300,000. So it's an intent, it's a goal, it's objective. And in a perfect world, it might actually occur, but that costs a lot of money. It's not cheap. It's very expensive. To jump ahead for a second, the British, while we have the General Sanders making these statements, the British, because of economic constraints, are continuing to cut their active duty force. I believe the most recent cut takes it from around 84,000 to 72,000 because they can't afford it. They don't have the money. And Europe right now is going through an economic crisis that is only going to get worse. The U.S. simply, you talked about putting in place a permanent headquarters in Poland. That's always been the plan. A fifth core headquarters is a headquarters around which units would arrive and become part of. Simply by saying that fifth core is now in Poland doesn't mean that the U.S. has a core, which is two or more divisions in Poland. The U.S. may station on a rotational basis or a permanent basis, we don't know yet. But right now, there's a rotational heavy brigade that rotates through Europe every year. So a U.S. Army brigade will come from the United States and rotate through Europe, and they do various training exercises throughout the NATO countries on the periphery of Russia. There's an additional brigade's worth of pre-positioned equipment there so that other people can fly in. So in a pinch, we could have two U.S. brigades with some divisional and corps level support, aviation, artillery, things of that nature, ready in Europe at some time. And if you want to call those two divisions Fifth Corps, okay. But it's not what it purports to be, meaning that it's not instantaneous power. There would still have to be things that would need to be done. And I will tell you this, that if they ever think about mobilizing Fifth Corps because there's a conflict brewing with Russia, I'll give you a pro hint that the storage site, which Poland has built, costing billions of dollars for this pre-positioned equipment, which has to be maintained in control buildings, et cetera. The Russians have these things called Caliber missiles. We might have been familiar with them. They tend to blow things up in Ukraine now and then, usually on a daily basis, like warehouses containing military equipment, which is what is in Poland, a warehouse with military equipment. If that brigade actually thinks it's going to land in Poland and marry up with this equipment in Poland, you're high. Whatever NATO is sent to the Baltic will die at the hands of Russia. That's a reality. And the United States says, this will not stand under Article 5. We're going to send the brigade into Poland. Russia will blow up brigade's equipment before the brigade arrives. That is a statement of fact. Russia will destroy the port facilities that the other equipment has to come in. Russia will destroy the airports where these planes have to land. Russia will destroy the airfields where NATO thinks it's going to bring in reinforcements. Russia is a serious player. And NATO's plans always are, we back in the Cold War, the reason why this didn't happen is because we had everything deployed there. We had all of our forces. Well, we had 250,000 forces already in Germany. We had thousands of aircraft already in Germany so that we could buy time for reinforcements to come in through what we called the Reforger exercise for 300,000 more American troops to come in to marry up with the prepositioned equipment. But we were always concerned, what if the Russians destroy the prepositioned equipment? What are they going to marry up with? So it had to happen quickly. We had to get the forces in within 10 days. It takes 6 months right now for us to gin up a brigade and send it over to Poland. We don't train. These things that happen through clockwork were things that we train for 24/7. That costs a lot of money. We don't do that anymore. So right now, NATO now is playing what I call PowerPoint games. PowerPoint, you can make pretty nice presentations. They have nice arrows, they have figures, and you can make words and you can say words and people look at it and go, oh my goodness, it's not reality. It's just a PowerPoint presentation. One question to ask NATO, all of these 300,000 troops that you want to bring up, how much artillery are you going to have? And how many artillery shells per piece have you allocated? Because one of the real truths that's come out of this conflict is that artillery is king. The side with the most artillery is going to win. Two, NATO doesn't have enough artillery, and even if they did, they will run out of ammunition in 10 days. Using the allocation that we see right now in Ukraine, NATO will run out of ammunition in 10 days, and then they all die. Even though I signed this letter in Madrid, it's got to be approved by Parliament. And right now, I can guarantee that Parliament's going to say no, or as they say in Turkey, hayır, to the membership of Sweden and Finland. So everything that happened in Madrid is fake. It's all fake. It's NATO desperately trying to make itself appear relevant with grand promises and all that. The reality is NATO, as we speak, is being destroyed in Ukraine. Its reputation is being destroyed. Its equipment is being destroyed. Its proxy army, Ukrainian military, is being destroyed. Its credibility is being destroyed. That's the reality of NATO right now. There's nothing about the NATO summit that was real. It was all fake. Yes, the US will send ships to Rota, Spain. We already have ships in Rota, Spain. So we're sending a few more. Think about what they're really going to do. Nothing. Yes, we'll send some more airplanes. But remember, sending airplanes requires airfields, requires, you don't just send the airplanes. You have to make sure you have the fuel, the ability to maintain them, and most importantly, weapons. And the one thing we don't have is a stockpile of weapons, because the Russian Air Force has not been fully engaged in Ukraine. If they fight NATO, they will be fully engaged. Now, there's a lot of Russian airplanes, and that means that we have to have a lot of airplanes with a lot of air-to-air missiles. We don't have a lot of air-to-air missiles. So at some point in time, we're going to run out of air-to-air missiles before the Russians run out of airplanes. And like on the ground with artillery, we lose. Logistically, NATO is not prepared to fight a large-scale ground war in Europe against Russia. That's the reality.